What a game at Craven Cottage. Arsenal thought they had snatched it right at the end. However, a VAR offside check saw that Gabriel Martinelli, having delivered the cross for Bukayo Saka's supposed winner, had strayed offside. So Arsenal dropped 2 points at the Cottage. They were a goal down. Joining me is Janusz Michallik and Luis Miguel Echegaray. What kind of performance was this from the Gunners today, Janusz?
Not good enough. Not good enough. That's for sure. I mean, in the end, they almost got it through. We would have been talking about the character here, and this is sort of performance that wins you championships. But in the end, it wasn't to be. And look, Arsenal slept through the entire first half. That is the problem. I mean, if you look at intensity of Arsenal in a game like this, there was absolutely none, with the exception of Bukayo Saka and Odegaard in that first half. And we know Odegaard went off. That tackle probably caused him, right? Because in the second half, he wasn't the same for sure. Saka continued to plow on, although Anthony Robinson, I mean, maybe we'll talk about him a little bit later, because, I mean, it's one of those games where it's great and terrible at the same time, right? Because he was involved in a lot of things. But I mean, he kept Saka quiet, and that's not easy. When I say quiet, obviously Saka was trying, and he was influential in many ways. But I think those, against him, he's done a pretty good job, while being terrible on the first goal, almost on that second one that didn't count. So it's good. But look, I think at this moment, Liverpool are planning a bus ride or a party for Jim. No, I'm just joking. But look, I mean, for Liverpool that didn't play the game, I mean, what results? So for Arsenal, they need to see it through somehow, because they got going in the second half. And let's face it here, Fulham did absolutely nothing in this game, with the exception of that goal, which they were probably surprised by as well, to a degree. And fair play. We'll say that for Fulham, they got a point, but they did zero in this game. So for Arsenal, who are fighting for that title, hey, it's massive 2 points dropped.
Yeah. Fulham LME scored with their first effort, pretty much their first 40 into Arsenal's half. I want to look bigger picture here, because Arsenal have now played 8 games away from home in the Premier League this season. A total of 24 points available. They've taken 12. That ain't going to get you the title, is it?
No, it's not. It's a good stat that you're mentioning. There's 2 things that are worrying for me about Arsenal in terms of winning this Premier League title. One is that, as much as we commend their set piece taken, I feel that sometimes that's their only option sometimes. That, or relying so much on Bukayo Saka. And as Janusz said, when you have somebody like a solid left back like Anthony Robinson, for the most part, keep your best player. Obviously, Martin Odegaard could come into play as well, coming off there. But when you have somebody like that keeping him quiet, then what else does Arsenal have? When it comes to winning the title, clearly they're a good team, clearly Champions League type of club. But you want to win, overcome Liverpool's run, you're going to have to do more than just rely on the set pieces and rely on Bukayo Saka. And that's the worrying thing. And as you mentioned, it's not even so much about what they do at the Emirates. They can be buoyed by their home support, but away from home, and especially against tough opponents. And look, absolutely, Fulham will be very happy with this point. Happy for Raul Jimenez, by the way. He took that one against the run of play. But at the end of the day, that's what they were hoping for. They were like trying to be collectively cohesive, defensively solid, to try and deny Arsenal 3 points. But what's going to happen when Arsenal plays teams that are better than Fulham, or maybe in a better form in terms of defensive unity and trying to get something? And that's the worry. They just need to be a little bit more creatively in the final third.
Arsenal dropping points today, Man City dropping points yesterday. Liverpool didn't even play, and they're the big winners. Now, about these Arsenal goals, right? They're really, really good at set plays. Most of their set plays, Janusz, are in-swingers. But we've seen this movie before. We know what they do. A lot of the time they go deep to the back post, they head it back across goal, and then, in this instance, Saliba scores. If you were coaching against Arsenal, you know what they do. How do you go about making it harder for them to get these chances from corner kicks?
Look, I mean, at the end of the day, there's nothing special about these set pieces. Everyone can do it, right? You can see what they do. But, it's always a question of how much you want it. That is always the question, because I mean, to a degree, I mean, they finally got it done, but they had great opportunities in the first half. But the fact that Gabriel wasn't there, right? I mean, he always wants it more than anybody else. And when they had him in the first half, that frustration of not getting there, that is the difference. And oh, by the way, what can you do about it? There's one thing that's probably the most important in all of it, and that is the quality of service, because that's usually the biggest problem for most teams, right? How frustrated are we all with your respective teams that the corner doesn't clear the near post, or it's not delivered. I mean, you have Saka and you have Declan Rice, and you saw that, right? I mean, on that far post, and it was close. Let's be honest. I mean, Havertz needs to put that away, right? We don't even deal with Saliba putting that away. Is he onside or is he offside? I mean, he's absolutely free. So I think when it came to set pieces, it's very, very difficult to train to do that in training in terms of the defensive part, because you're never going to go live against your own players, right? You're never going to truly, really go like you go in the game, because you want to make sure there are no injuries there. But it's really going forwards how much you want it, and defensively just take responsibility, because in the end it becomes 1 against 1. I don't care if you play men for men or you play zone. There are responsibilities there, and when the ball comes into the area, sometimes you don't have to win a ball, Mark. You just have to put a body on the player, right? Sometimes a little bit of a push, a little bit of a hold can be enough if you can't win it outright.
Elami?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to jump in because the question that you asked, I was thinking about it over and over again, because it wasn't even just corners, it's also in free kicks, how the setup basically is, as you mentioned, the offensive players, the players running into the box are nowhere near their marker, and they kind of just run and swim in like a sea of fish coming in at the same time. So it's very difficult, as Janusz was saying, to try and defend that, because if you man mark them, you're chasing them unwillingly, and if you zonal, you don't know where they're going. I think the number one for me, if I'm the manager of the team that's in this case being Fulham, Bernd Leno in that situation needs to be the most vocal person, because he knows that at this point, his teammates have nobody to mark. There's nothing until the very end when the likes of Saliba and the other players come in swimming in. That's one. And then number two, it's really, really tricky to do, as Janusz was saying, because you have to take responsibility of the person. So even before they come in, it's almost like a sort of neutral zone idea in basketball in the NBA, where it's like, all right, no matter what happens, I'm in control of this dominion. So whoever's responsible for that area of Saliba, you need to be responsible. But it's so much easier said than done. It's a very simple way to take a corner, but they do it very well. And it's not just in corners. It's
as easy and silly as it sounds, don't concede them. Because there's a way of doing that. I mean, they've had 6 today, but there's been games where they had 10, 11, 12, 13, right? And some of them are preventable because as a defender, I remember being in a situation sometimes too easy to concede a corner where you maybe block a shot and it's going away, and you don't want to give that extra effort to slide and maybe put it away for a throw-in. Little things like that. Knowing what Arsenal are capable of doing, and they're doing that consistently, I think you have managers. I hope you have managers who stress that. Say, hey, don't give up on any goal. Don't just think that you can't get there. Try to make sure that you prevent them from happening. Don't give it too many. And it seems easy, but I just wonder with a team like Arsenal that you have to stress that.
Elami, that's 5 draws now for Arsenal. Why aren't they creating more chances? They only had 4 shots on target today. Is it chance creation that's the bigger issue than chance scoring? Because they've been linked with Isak, but if you're not creating chances, it doesn't matter who you've got up front. You ain't getting the chances, so you ain't getting the goals. So what's the biggest issue here?
Yeah, it's a good question, but I think I have to go back to the old broken record here. They need a smarter type of center forward, somebody that understands the movement a little better. They just don't have it. They don't have that. They rely a lot on the width play, particularly Bukayo Saka. When Martin Odegaard is fully healthy, it's between him and Saka to create everything. To your point, it can be limited in terms of goal creations, but I do think that somebody smart let's say, for example, in this case, an Alexander Isak can alleviate a lot of that, because Isak is not just a body. He's really smart with his movement. He likes to drop deep sometimes. He goes wide as well. He's got good, quick feet. So my point being that when you have a player that can really understand who he is as a striker, that alleviates a lot of the things. In this specific moment, alleviates that wide play from Saka. So it's a sort of double-edged sort of a problem. The lack of goal creation is not being created enough. But I think when you don't have the type of lethal striker that you want, it becomes an even bigger mountain to climb. It's just this January, they have to do everything possible to try and strengthen that, I think.
That was the question to you, Janusz, because they're 6 points behind Liverpool right now, who've got a game in hand. That's not going to be played till next year against Everton. But they're not creating as much, and they're not getting those 1-goal wins that they've been good at getting in the past under Mikel Arteta. So with where they are right now, regardless of what Mikel Arteta thought beforehand, is he now thinking, as Elami has just said, I got to get someone in, whether it's creativity, more creativity, or a goal scorer in January, because we don't want, if you're an Arsenal fan, another season whereby, if only we'd signed X, Y, or Z, then we could have got closer or we could have won that.
I think in general, but I think the conversation needs to go differently a little bit here in this. I mean, I think that ultimately to become a team that consistently is up there, I mean, they have been, but yeah, I mean, that's one area where they can do with a consistent goal scorer. But to me today, it's. I mean, they've created enough today to win this, right? I mean, when you look at the statistics, I mean, just one-way traffic, right? So I wouldn't look at that, because to me, it's. They didn't take advantage of the fact that Liverpool didn't play and other teams dropping points. It's when you lose the points that matter, right? Because I mean, I'm looking at the team when they were dropping points. Their response has been pretty good, with the exception, I have to look down here. When they lost to Newcastle, they had Inter. I know it's not Premier League. They lost that one, and then they drew away at Chelsea. And we can see that Chelsea are getting better, so that's not easy. But look at today. I mean, it's a difficult week, right? We were just talking about Liverpool. I mean, they beat Real Madrid, they beat Liverpool, and then Newcastle, you drop the points. Well, that's a difficult week, right? I mean, here we are. I mean, away to West Ham for Arsenal, they beat Manchester United, and then you have Fulham. So you have 2 wins, important wins, and a draw. I mean, it's not all that easy. I think I look at this game today where even with what they had today, they should have won it. They just didn't take advantage of that. Would the fact that they have a consistent goal scorer would have helped them today? Maybe, maybe not. But I'm not worried about Arsenal just yet to that degree, because it is 6 points. I think the fact that Liverpool will have to play Everton later does make a difference, because if they played him 7:30 at noon, and now it's a midweek somewhere in there late in the season, where that game is against Everton is going to be much, much bigger under the lights somewhere than it was then. So let's just hold on here. I know it's a topic of conversation, and I agree with you both, because we know that they don't truly have that prolific goal scorer. But I don't think today was about that. It's a difficult week, 2 wins, a draw, tough opposition, something that Liverpool just did. And they got away with it. Liverpool got away with it.
I know, but I think MD's point is it wasn't just about today. We've talked about 5 draws, like the record that you said away from home, and this is a broken record because it's not even just about this season. And again, this Arsenal team is not just trying to get a top 4 spot; they're trying to win the Premier League title. And if you look at the recent history of Premier League title winners, all of them have a striker that you can depend on. And Liverpool is a unique exception because Mohamed Salah is both that as well as being a winger. Arsenal have not had that for a while, and that's a major reason, not the reason, to your point. I think that obviously it's going to be difficult in terms of scheduling, but it's a major reason why they can't win this, why they haven't won it in 20 years. They need a striker, and I think in January, Mikel Arteta has to do anything possible to have somebody that he can rely on, because otherwise it's just going to be another season where they end in the top 4, but they don't win the Premier League title, and that's what Arsenal fans want.
Just to kind of bigger picture wrap this up, the standard of challenger, Janusz, regardless who's in the lead, right now it's Liverpool, right? And they've only dropped points in 3 games. But there's a gap now. Arsenal have dropped points in 7 games. Chelsea have dropped points in 6 games. Manchester City have dropped points in 7 games. Is the standard of the challenge to the Premier League top dogs this season weaker than it was last season, Janusz? You first.
I don't know if it's weaker. I think again we have to go to the Premier League, and I mean, look what's happening today. I look at Bournemouth, I look at Brighton, I look at Brentford, I look at all these teams, right? Where it almost seems to me that it's sometimes it's easier to get up for these big teams and get a result against big teams than it is against smaller teams, right? Because of the intensity of what's happening for those top teams, being in Europe and playing in Premier League and all the cups as well. So I've always thought that when you have games like these, you almost want to keep that concentration. You want a bigger challenge, so the players don't have to be reminded what it's all about. But I'm always skeptical in calling these races, even though I have last week for Liverpool to a degree, because I look at the games, how fast they come, and the opposition you have to face. Now you have the Champions League midweek as well. It's so hard. I just think that too often we ask the players what we don't understand, right? I mean, I've had a difficult time, getting out of bed today, and I no longer play football. And yet we think that these players. I mean, today, like Liverpool against Newcastle, I saw that lack of intensity, right? The first thing that struck you today, in these conditions, on top of that, right, was, I mean, just nothing from Arsenal. I mean, they buzz around. We can talk about not taking advantage of chances. We can talk about this or that, but the pressing is always there, and it just wasn't. The first 45 minutes, that's where Arsenal, I think, lost that game, because they have a pretty good record against Fulham. I think if they were able to give the normal energy that we see from Arsenal and score the first goal, again, we're looking probably done and dusted by halftime.
Let me same question to you.
Well, it's a good one. As you look at the Premier League table of this season, what is it? 12 teams have at least 20 points, and then the difference between first and sixth is 10. And it's looking like one of the most competitive Premier League seasons in recent history. And it's not just about the top 4, but also those mid-table teams trying to get European football. There is a lot of and part of it, as Janusz was saying, is the Premier League is just a Godzilla of a place, especially in December. I mean, Liverpool, for example, are playing 9 matches in the space of a month. Champions League teams play 7 to 8, including the League Cup quarterfinals and all that stuff. So there's a lot going on. And the other thing I think is the quality of management has highly improved all over. So, you're looking at somebody like Iraola at Bournemouth, Marco Silva at Fulham, like so many good managers that are becoming better tacticians as they push these teams to push people forward. So Arsenal's quest now as well, when you have a surging Liverpool, regardless of obviously giving away or drawing Newcastle earlier on, but you have that. Pep Guardiola's Manchester City, yes, they're going through a tough time, but it's Pep Guardiola and Manchester City. You just can't discount them. And you can go down the table. So this is a very difficult challenge for Arsenal, and it is getting harder. And they have to be smarter moving forward. This is the biggest point. You said it already. Their away form is not good. And 5 draws, if you want to win the Premier League, you cannot do that. You have to find ways to win, and it's going to be harder than easier for sure.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of it all, I mean, we can't let Arsenal off the hook here, because I mean,
no chance.
There was nothing from Fulham in this game. I'm trying to think, because usually in a game like this you celebrate, and I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to celebrate that sort of defending, but I understand as a player that, you take a point like this, but, they did, Fulham did a great job in the center of the pitch, right? I mean, that, they funneled basically Arsenal into it, because they knew what it means on the outside. Anthony, I mean, if we're going to ever start rumors here, this is the game to start a rumor. Anthony Robinson to Arsenal, right? There's a need at left back, and let's face it, in the job that he needed to do defensively, I thought he was tremendous. Everything else was poor. I mean, lost the ball 25, 26 times. His passing was horrendous, but so was everybody else's for Fulham, for that matter. But I think he did a tremendous job. But I'm looking at the statistics here. and Arsenal needed to pick up the points here, regardless of what we think in terms of striker, this, that, or the other. It just wasn't good enough anywhere. They didn't have the legs today. They didn't have that intensity, almost as if they thought it was just going to come, and it almost did, right? And look how the conversation would have changed, but the game wouldn't, because they were not good today at all.
MD, run the schedule for Arsenal this December. You know it. You have it there. It's actually pretty doable, like on paper. Crystal Palace.
So was Fulham away though, LME.
Ipswich. Yeah, exactly. That's the issue. The fact is, like, when you look at on paper and you look at Arsenal's schedule in December, regardless of the fact that it's the busiest month in the Premier League, this is a doable thing. But because of their record away from home, because of gaining draws, and because, I'm sorry, they need a striker, they need somebody, it's going to be difficult. They have to find ways to win more so than just corners and Bukayo Saka.
Let's wrap up the early slate. First of all, we're going to have to check and see if Janusz Michallik does have any interest in Anthony Robinson's agency that represents him, because that was out of left field.
I know.
A bit of skullduggery going on there.
Well, I mean, he's been in everybody's been talking about him. Maybe I've missed it. I haven't heard about Arsenal.
Well, if Arsenal get a left back before a striker, I don't think.
Yeah. No, I know that, but I've heard a little. I mean, there's a lot of interest, so it's not out of left field. I'm just.
He was the best. He was the best left back last season.
What about Kieran Tierney? Just saying. Maybe the one player.
Well, what about
football club
Tierney?
He's the one player at the football club that wasn't signed by Mikel Arteta, and his backside is out the window. Yeah, he's been injury prone, but he's fit again and can't get a look at. Anyway, I want to wrap this up because we've got Spurs against Chelsea, full live coverage of that straight after the final whistle with Janusz, LME, and myself. But normally, if you watch Sesame Street, you've got kids. It's usually brought to you by a letter and a number. Well, the Premier League early shift today was brought to you by the number 86. Because after 86 minutes, Brighton were 2-0 up at Leicester, and Ipswich were leading Bournemouth by 1-0. After the 86th minute, it finished Leicester 2, Brighton 2, and Ipswich, having led for 86 minutes, were beaten at home by Bournemouth. See you after Spurs Chelsea. Bye for now.